People often decide who you are before they ever learn your story. They see your clothes, your job, your family, your place in the world, and within seconds, they create an entire version of you in their minds. I learned that lesson the hard way. My name is Daniel Carter. To most people, I was just a quiet single father raising his 8-year-old daughter. And honestly, that was the role I valued most. Being Lily's father. Several years earlier, my life changed forever when I lost my wife, Sarah. She had been the person who filled our home with warmth and laughter. The person who could make even ordinary days feel special. After she was gone, everything became quieter, harder, but I never allowed Lily to feel alone. She deserved a childhood filled with love, not memories of what she lost. So, I adjusted. I learned how to pack school lunches. I learned how to help with homework. I learned which bedtime stories she liked most. I learned that being a parent meant putting someone else's happiness before your own. My military career continued during that time, but I kept that part of my life separate. I was an Air Force officer, a decorated one. Years of service had given me responsibilities most people never saw. Long missions, difficult decisions, sacrifices made far from home. But when I came back to Lily, I wasn't a commander. I wasn't an officer. I was simply Dad. And that's exactly how I wanted it. I never told people about my rank unless it was necessary. I didn't need recognition. The uniform was important when I wore it. But outside of duty, I wanted Lily to know me as the person who packed her lunch and helped her study, not as someone with medals on his chest. One Friday afternoon, Lily ran into the house holding a letter. "Dad." I looked up from the kitchen. "What happened?" She jumped excitedly. "I got selected." I smiled. "Selected for what?" She handed me the letter with both hands. It was an announcement from her school. Students with outstanding academic achievements had been chosen for a special educational travel program. The reward was a first-class flight experience to visit a major science center in another city. I looked at Lily. Her eyes were shining. "First class?" She nodded. "I've never been on a plane before." I laughed. "Then we're going to make sure your first flight is unforgettable." She hugged me tightly. "Can we really go?" "Of course." That weekend, I prepared everything. Tickets, documents, snacks, a small notebook for Lily to record her memories. For her, this wasn't just a trip. It was a dream. I wanted her to experience something special, something she could remember years later. On the day of the flight, we arrived at the airport early. Lily wore her favorite dress and carried a small backpack filled with books and toys. I wore simple clothes, a plain shirt, comfortable pants. Nothing expensive, nothing that attracted attention. I didn't care. I wasn't there to impress anyone. I was there to watch my daughter experience something amazing. As we entered the first-class area, I noticed several passengers looking at us. Some looked curious. Others looked confused. Then a woman wearing an airline uniform approached. Her name tag read, Victoria Hayes. She looked at our tickets, then at me, then back at the tickets. "First class." Her tone made the question sound less like confirmation and more like disbelief. "Yes," I replied politely. She looked at Lily, then at my clothes. A small expression of judgment crossed her face. One I had seen many times before. The assumption that someone like me didn't belong. Victoria handed our boarding passes back slowly. "Are you sure these are the correct tickets?" I looked at her calmly. "Yes. My daughter was selected through her school program." She gave a small smile. Not a friendly one. The kind of smile people use when they think they already understand everything. "Of course." She glanced toward another attendant. "Please make sure everything is handled properly." The words sounded polite, but the meaning behind them was clear. She didn't believe we belonged there. Lily noticed. Children often understand more than adults expect. As we walked toward the waiting area, she held my hand tighter. "Dad." "Yes." "Did we do something wrong?" The question caught me off guard. I looked down at her. "No." "Why would you think that?" She looked back toward the staff. "Because they keep looking at us." I knelt beside her. "Lily, remember something. People don't always know the truth when they look at someone." She listened carefully. "Some people judge based on what they see. But that doesn't mean they are right." She nodded slowly. "Okay." I smiled. Now, are you still excited about your first flight? A small smile returned to her face. Yes. Good. Because I promised you a great memory. We continued waiting. I tried to ignore the staff's behavior. I had dealt with far worse situations during my years in service. But this was different. Not because they insulted me. I could handle that. It was because Lily saw it. She was learning how the world sometimes treated people before knowing their stories. And I hated that. A few minutes later, another first-class attendant approached us. Mr. Carter? Yes. Could I see your identification again? I handed it over. She checked it carefully. Everything was correct. Yet the suspicion remained. I apologize, she said. But her expression showed no apology. It is just unusual. What is unusual? She hesitated. A passenger traveling alone with a child in first class. I looked at her. My daughter earned this opportunity. That should be enough. The attendant became quiet. For the first time, she seemed unsure how to respond. Then Victoria returned. Everything fine? The other attendant nodded. Yes. Victoria looked at me. We were just confirming details. I smiled slightly. Details matter. Especially when people make assumptions. Her expression changed. Maybe she realized I understood exactly what was happening. But I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Years in the Air Force had taught me something important. Real confidence doesn't need to announce itself. It simply remains steady. Eventually, boarding began. Lily looked excited again as we entered the aircraft. She stared at the wide seats, the comfortable space, the view outside the window. Dad, this is amazing. I smiled. Enjoy it. This is your moment. As we settled into our seats, I noticed Victoria watching from the front of the cabin. She still looked uncertain. She still didn't know who I was, and I had no intention of telling her. Not yet, because the people who judge you by appearances often reveal more about themselves than they ever learn about you. I wasn't interested in proving I belonged. I already knew I did. But soon, the same people who looked down on a simple father and his daughter would discover something they never expected. The quiet man sitting beside his child wasn't someone ordinary. He was someone who had spent years serving his country, someone who had earned every bit of respect they refused to give. And when the truth finally came out, their opinions would change forever, that I had learned throughout my life that patience was a strength. In the military, reacting emotionally could create bigger problems. A good leader remained calm under pressure. A good father did the same. That was why I ignored the small comments, the suspicious looks, the quiet whispers. I told myself it didn't matter. I was there for Lily, not for them. But some people mistake patience for weakness. And Victoria Hayes was about to make that mistake. About an hour after takeoff, she approached our seats with another attendant. The man's name tag read Jason Reed. He looked at me, then at my ticket. Mr. Carter? Yes. Could we speak for a moment? I looked at Lily. Is something wrong? Jason held the ticket in his hand. We just need to clarify your seating arrangement. I glanced at my seat. This is my assigned seat. He gave a small smile. Yes, but there appears to be some confusion. What kind of confusion? Victoria stepped forward. The first-class cabin is reserved for passengers with verified reservations. The sentence sounded polite, but the implication was obvious. I looked at her. My reservation is verified. Jason looked uncomfortable. We're not saying it isn't. Then what are you saying? Neither answered immediately. The silence said enough. A few passengers nearby began looking over. Lily noticed. Dad. I turned toward her. It's okay. Victoria lowered her voice. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding when you checked in. I looked at her calmly. There wasn't. Would you like to see my ticket again? Jason glanced at the document. Then at me. That won't be necessary. But the damage was already done. People were watching. Some looked curious. Others looked judgmental. I had spent years in situations where people questioned my decisions. But this was different, because my daughter was sitting beside me. She wasn't just watching strangers judge me. She was learning from how I responded. Lily quietly held my hand. Dad. What? Why do they think we shouldn't be here? Her question hurt more than anything the staff had said, because she wasn't asking about seats. She was asking about fairness. I looked at her. Sometimes people make mistakes when they don't know the whole story. But are they bad people? I paused. No. People can make wrong choices without being bad forever. She thought about that. I was glad she asked, because I wanted her to understand something important. The world would not always treat people fairly. But unfair treatment did not mean we had to become unfair ourselves. Across the aisle, an older man had been quietly observing everything. He wore a simple jacket, but his posture was unmistakable. The way he sat, the way he noticed details, the way his eyes moved through the cabin. He wasn't just an ordinary passenger. Later, when the attendants walked away, he leaned slightly toward me. "Excuse me." I looked over. "Yes." He smiled. "My name is James Walker." I nodded politely. "Nice to meet you." He studied me for a moment. "I hope you don't mind me saying something." "What is it?" "You've handled this situation like someone who has spent a long time under pressure." I smiled faintly. "Everyone learns patience somewhere." He looked at my hands, then at the way I carried myself. "I believe they have underestimated you." I didn't respond, because he was right, but I wasn't ready to prove it. Not yet. Power was easy to show. Character was harder. And I wanted Lily to learn that dignity was not something you abandoned just because others failed to show respect. Colonel James Walker didn't ask any more questions. I appreciated that. Some people were curious because they wanted a story. Others were curious because they wanted to understand. He was the second kind. For the next hour, I focused on Lily. I helped her choose a movie. I answered her endless questions about flying. I watched her excitement return. That mattered more than anything happening around me. But the situation with the staff did not end. A few hours into the flight, Victoria returned with Jason. This time, their expressions were more serious. "Mr. Carter." I looked up. "Yes. We need to discuss your daughter." My attention immediately shifted. "What about Lily?" Victoria glanced at the small bag beside her. There was an issue with the items she brought into the cabin. I frowned. "What issue?" Jason picked up Lily's backpack. "We found several snacks that are not normally permitted in this section." I looked at him. "They were provided by the school program. They are sealed. That doesn't change the policy." I remained calm. "What policy?" He hesitated, because there wasn't a clear answer. The snacks were not dangerous. They were not prohibited. They were simply something they had decided to question. Lily looked worried. "Dad, did I do something wrong?" Colonel James Walker didn't ask any more questions. I appreciated that. Some people were curious because they wanted a story. Others were curious because they wanted to understand. He was the second kind. For the next hour, I focused on Lily. I helped her choose a movie. I answered her endless questions about flying. I watched her excitement return. That mattered more than anything happening around me. But the situation with the staff did not end. A few hours into the flight, Victoria returned with Jason. This time, their expressions were more serious. "Mr. Carter." I looked up. "Yes. We need to discuss your daughter." My attention immediately shifted. "What about Lily?" Victoria glanced at the small bag beside her. There was an issue with the items she brought into the cabin. I frowned. "What issue?" Jason picked up Lily's backpack. "We found several snacks that are not normally permitted in this section." I looked at him. "They were provided by the school program. They are sealed. That doesn't change the policy." I remained calm. "What policy?" He hesitated, because there wasn't a clear answer. The snacks were not dangerous. They were not prohibited. They were simply something they had decided to question. Lily looked worried. "Dad, did I do something wrong?" That was the moment something inside me changed. Not anger, not frustration, clarity. I had ignored their behavior because I didn't want Lily to think every problem needed to be solved through authority. But there was a difference between patience and allowing someone to hurt your child. I leaned closer to Lily. "No, you didn't do anything wrong." Then I looked at the staff. "Let's be clear. My daughter earned this trip. She followed every instruction given to her. Her belongings were checked before boarding. So, what exactly is the problem?" The cabin became quiet. Several passengers turned toward us. Victoria looked surprised. Perhaps she expected me to continue staying silent. I continued. "If there is a rule, show me the rule. If there is a mistake, correct it." But questioning a child because of assumptions about her father is unacceptable. Jason looked uncomfortable. That wasn't our intention. Then I suggest you consider how your actions appear. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then the older passenger across the aisle stood. He's right. Everyone looked toward him. James Walker calmly introduced himself. I have watched this situation since the beginning. The man has been respectful the entire time. He has followed every procedure. And yet, he has been treated like he doesn't belong. Victoria's expression changed slightly. She recognized that his opinion carried weight, but she still didn't know why. James looked at me, then quietly said, "You don't have to explain yourself. I already know." I understood what he meant. He had noticed the discipline, the posture, the way I handle pressure. He knew I was not just an ordinary passenger. Still, I remained quiet, because this moment wasn't about my rank. It was about my daughter. Eventually, Victoria apologized. It was not a perfect apology. Not yet. But it was a beginning. I apologize if our actions made you uncomfortable. I looked at Lily, then back at her. Thank you. But I hope you remember something. Every passenger has a story you don't know. Respect should come before assumptions. She nodded. For the rest of the flight, nobody bothered us again. Lily eventually fell asleep against my shoulder. I looked out the window at the clouds below. I thought about all the years I had worn my uniform, all the times people respected the rank before knowing the person. But today, I learned something different. Respect that comes only after discovering someone's title isn't true respect. The greatest test of character is how you treat people when you believe they have nothing to offer you. And the people sitting around me had just failed that test. But my daughter had passed hers. She had seen unfairness. And instead of becoming bitter, she learned kindness. That was the lesson I wanted her to remember. Not my rank, not my achievements, just the importance of treating every person with dignity. The rest of the flight passed quietly. For most passengers, the incident became just another uncomfortable moment they would eventually forget. For me, it became a reminder that people often reveal who they are when they think they know your value. Not your rank, not your achievements, not your history, just their assumption of you. Lily continued enjoying the flight. She looked out the window. She asked questions about clouds. She wrote notes in the small notebook I packed for her. To her, the trip was still special. And that was all I wanted. When we landed, I thought the situation was over. I was ready to collect our bags and leave. But as we reached the gate, Victoria approached again. This time, she wasn't alone. A supervisor stood beside her. "Mr. Carter." I stopped. "Yes." The supervisor looked uncomfortable. "We would like to discuss what happened during the flight." I nodded. "Okay." Victoria spoke first. "I want to clarify that we were only trying to follow procedures." I looked at her calmly. "I understand, but procedures were not the problem." She seemed surprised. Then what was the assumption behind them? Nobody spoke. I continued. "You looked at me and my daughter. You saw simple clothes. You saw a single father. And you decided we didn't belong." Victoria looked away. Before she could respond, Colonel James Walker stepped forward. "I believe there is something you should know." Everyone turned toward him. He looked at me. "Daniel, would you mind?" I understood what he meant. For the first time, I considered whether staying silent was still the right choice. Not for my pride. Not for revenge. For Lily. She had seen people judge us. I wanted her to understand that confidence wasn't about hiding who you were. It was about knowing who you were. I reached into my wallet and removed my military identification. I handed it to the supervisor. His expression changed immediately. The supervisor handed my identification back carefully. "I apologize, Colonel Carter." His voice was different now, more respectful. But I noticed something important. The respect appeared only after he knew my position. That was exactly the problem. I looked at him. "I appreciate your apology, but I hope you understand something. Today you learned my title. You did not learn my value." The supervisor lowered his eyes. "I understand." Victoria stepped forward. "Mr. Carter." She stopped herself, then corrected. "Colonel Carter." I noticed the change. The title came easily now. I truly apologize for how this was handled. I was only trying to make sure everything followed policy. I nodded. I believe you thought that. But good intentions do not erase the impact of someone's actions. She remained silent. I continued. The question isn't whether you knew my background. The question is whether you would have treated me differently if you never found out. That question stayed in the air, because everyone knew the answer. A few minutes later, airline management became involved. The supervisor contacted an executive responsible for customer relations. His name was Michael Bennett. He arrived with a serious expression and immediately reviewed the situation. Unlike the others, he did not begin by defending the staff. He began by listening. He spoke with Victoria, then Jason, then several passengers who had witnessed what happened. Finally, he spoke with me. Colonel Carter, I want to apologize on behalf of the airline. I appreciate that, but I want to be clear. This isn't about giving me special treatment. Michael nodded. I understand. It's about how passengers are treated before anyone knows their story. Exactly. I looked at Lily. She was sitting nearby, quietly drawing in her notebook. I don't want my daughter growing up believing people only deserve respect after proving themselves. Michael listened carefully. That is a fair point. I will personally review what happened, not because you are an officer, but because every customer deserves dignity. That answer mattered, because accountability was different from revenge. I didn't want Victoria embarrassed. I didn't want Jason punished simply because they had underestimated me. I wanted them to understand. I wanted the system to learn. As we prepared to leave, Colonel Walker walked beside me. You handled that well. I smiled. I almost didn't. He laughed softly. That's because you're human. We stopped near the exit. You know, many people use power to make others feel small. You did the opposite. I looked at Lily. Power isn't the lesson I want her to learn. What is? Character. James nodded. Good answer. Outside the airport, Lily held my hand. Dad. Yes. Are you famous? I laughed. No. But everyone respected you when they found out who you were. I looked at her seriously. Remember this. People should respect you before they know what you can do. Not after. She nodded. That evening, as we returned home, I thought about the flight. The staff thought they had discovered my secret. They thought my uniform explained my worth. But they were wrong. My uniform represented my service. It did not create my character. That was something I carried long before anyone knew my name. And hopefully, it was something Lily would carry too. A few days after the flight, I received a call from Michael Bennett, the airline executive who had handled the investigation. I almost didn't answer. Not because I didn't care, because I didn't want the situation to become bigger than it needed to be. I had already made my point, but when I picked up the phone, I realized the investigation had uncovered more than just what happened to Lily and me. Colonel Carter, I wanted to update you personally. Thank you. We completed our review. I listened quietly. Unfortunately, this was not an isolated incident. Those words didn't surprise me as much as they should have. What do you mean? Michael explained that the airline had reviewed previous customer complaints. Several passengers had reported similar treatment. People who looked wealthy were treated warmly. People who appeared ordinary were questioned more aggressively. Some passengers had been made uncomfortable because employees assumed they did not belong. The pattern was concerning, Michael said. The issue was not one mistake. It was a mindset. I looked out the window at Lily playing in the living room. A simple trip had revealed something much larger. Have the employees been informed? Yes. Victoria Hayes and Jason Reed are facing disciplinary action. I was silent for a moment. Then I said, I hope they learned from this. Michael seemed surprised. Most people would ask for stronger punishment. Punishment alone doesn't change people. Understanding does. After the call ended, I sat down beside Lily. She was drawing a picture from our flight. The airplane. The clouds. The two of us sitting together. Dad. Yes. Did those people get in trouble? I nodded. Yes. Because they were mean to us? I thought carefully. Because they forgot something important. What? Everyone deserves respect. She looked at her drawing. But you could have told them you were in the Air Force. I could have. Why didn't you? I smiled. Because I wanted to see what they would do when they thought I was just a normal person. She looked confused. Was that good? It wasn't about testing them. It was about remembering something. What? Your character should not depend on whether people know your achievements. She thought quietly. I continued. Anyone can be respectful when they know someone is powerful. But true kindness is how you treat people when you think they have nothing to offer you. Lily nodded slowly. I think I understand. I smiled. That was the lesson I wanted her to carry. Not that her father had authority. Not that some people deserve more respect than others. But that every person deserved dignity. Later that week, I met an old friend from my military days. Captain Ryan Brooks. We hadn't seen each other in months. But the moment he saw me, he smiled. I heard about your airport adventure. I laughed. News travels quickly. Ryan sat across from me. You know what I find interesting? What? Everyone is talking about your rank. I raised an eyebrow. And I think they missed the best part. I looked at him. The best part. He smiled. But we didn't understand everything. I looked at him. What changed? He smiled. Life. Sometimes the most important missions aren't the ones written on paper. They're the ones waiting for you at home. I knew exactly what he meant. Lily. My greatest responsibility. My greatest reason. That evening, I returned home and found Lily sitting at the table. She was working on a school assignment. What are you writing? She covered the paper. It's a surprise. I laughed. Okay. A few minutes later, she finished and handed it to me. It was a short paragraph about our trip. I read the first sentence. My dad taught me that being strong does not mean making people afraid of you. I paused, then continued reading. She wrote about how I stayed calm, how I held her hand when people treated us unfairly, how I explained that kindness mattered more than proving who we were. When I finished, I looked at her. This is very good. She smiled. Really? Really? She climbed onto the chair beside me. Dad? Yes. Are you sad that they didn't know you were important? I thought about the question, then shook my head. No. Why? Because they taught me something. What? That being respected because of a title is temporary. But being respected because of your character lasts forever. She smiled. I like that. So do I. Months passed after the incident. The airline continued improving its training programs. Michael occasionally updated me about the changes. Not because I asked, because he wanted me to know the experience had created something positive. Victoria sent a written apology. It was longer than I expected. She admitted that she had judged me before knowing me. She admitted that she had confused appearance with value. I accepted the apology, but I hoped she understood the deeper lesson. Respect should not begin after someone proves they deserve it. It should begin because they are human. Looking back, that flight was never really about first class. It was never about money. It was never about status. It was about a father wanting his daughter to have a special memory. And somehow, that simple trip taught us both something much bigger. People may underestimate you. They may judge you. They may decide your worth before hearing your story. But their opinion does not define you. Your actions do. I spent years protecting my country. I spent years carrying responsibility. But when I looked at Lily sleeping peacefully that night, I understood something. The most important mission of my life was never written in military records. It was not a medal. It was not a title. It was raising a daughter who understood kindness, courage, and dignity. Because one day, she would face a world that judged people quickly. And I wanted her to remember what I taught her. Real strength is not showing everyone how powerful you are. Real strength is remaining good even when nobody knows your power. And that was the lesson I hoped Lily would carry forever, that I never expected anyone to know about what happened on that flight. To me, it was a personal experience, a lesson between a father and daughter. But the world had a different idea. A few weeks after the incident, I started receiving messages from people I didn't know. At first, I was confused. Then I learned what happened. A passenger had shared the story online. The details spread quickly. A single father judged by his appearance. A young girl who witnessed unfair treatment. A military officer who chose patience instead of anger. People wanted to know my name. They wanted interviews. They wanted my opinion. But I refused. Not because I was ashamed, because the story was never supposed to be about me. It was supposed to be about something much simpler. How we treat people when we think nobody important is watching. Several reporters contacted me. Some wanted to talk about my military career. Others wanted to focus on the airline staff. But every time, I gave the same answer. I'm not interested in becoming famous. The important part of the story is the lesson, not the person. Some people didn't understand. They thought I was wasting an opportunity. But I knew what mattered. Fame would disappear. The lesson would remain. My life continued the same way it always had. I served my country. I completed my responsibilities. And most importantly, I spent time with Lily. The attention from the incident eventually faded. But the impact on Lily remained. I noticed small changes in her. She became more aware of others, more thoughtful. One afternoon, we were walking through a park when she saw a man sitting alone on a bench. He was wearing old clothes and carrying a worn backpack. Dad. Yes. Do you think people judge him too? I looked at her. Maybe. Why? Because sometimes people make decisions about others without knowing their story. She nodded. Like what happened to us? Exactly. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made me smile. Then we shouldn't do that to anyone else. I placed my hand on her shoulder. That's right. That was the greatest thing I could have taught her. Not how to defend herself. Not how to prove she was better. How to remain kind. Months later, I received a letter. The sender was Victoria Hayes. I recognized her name immediately. For a moment, I simply looked at the envelope. Then I opened it. The letter was different from her earlier apology. There were no excuses, no explanations, only honesty. She wrote that the incident had forced her to examine the way she treated people. She admitted that she had confused wealth with worth, that she had judged passengers based on appearances, and that she had forgotten something every customer service professional should remember. Every person has a story. I read the letter twice. Then I placed it on the table. Lily looked at me. Is she sorry? And my greatest choices happened at home. 1 year after the flight, Lily reached another important milestone. Her school held a special ceremony recognizing students for their achievements. I sat in the audience watching her walk onto the stage. She looked confident, proud, happy. The same little girl who once asked why strangers treated us differently was now standing tall without fear. When she received her certificate, she looked toward me. I smiled. She smiled back. In that moment, I didn't think about my military career. I didn't think about medals. I didn't think about the people who once underestimated me. I only thought about how lucky I was. After the ceremony, Lily ran toward me. Dad, I hugged her. I'm proud of you. She looked up. Because I got the award? I smiled. No, because of the person you are becoming. She hugged me again. As we walked back to the car, I thought about everything that had happened. The first-class cabin, the judgment, the embarrassment, the apology, the lessons. For a long time, I believed respect was something people earned through accomplishments. And that was partly true. Hard work matters. Service matters. Responsibility matters. But there is another kind of respect, the kind that comes from character, the kind that exists before anyone knows your name. The airline staff once looked at me and saw only a simple father. They didn't see the officer. They didn't see the years of service. They didn't see the sacrifices. But they also missed something more important. They didn't see the man. And that was their mistake. Because a person's worth is never measured by their clothes, their position, their money, or the respect others choose to give them. It is measured by how they treat people, how they respond when challenged, how they act when they have nothing to prove. I spent years carrying the title of Air Force officer. It was an honor, a responsibility, a part of who I was. But when I looked at Lily holding my hand as we walked through the parking lot, I realized something. The greatest title I would ever have was not written on a uniform. It was not given by an organization. It was not earned through years of service. It was much simpler, Dad. And that was the title I was most proud to carry.